strange because most of the team that will line out on Saturday against the All Blacks will have played one game, and that was against Munster in the URC, and they lost that game.
We're considering it a Grand Slam because we're playing all four of what we used to call the home nations. However, this match is in Chicago, and if it's a real Grand Slam, it's meant to be obviously played in Ireland.
There's every chance you can get a good performance and still not win a test match, particularly against a side as good as New Zealand. So even if Ireland play brilliantly, that doesn't guarantee them anything.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, continuing our big build-up to Chicago and playing Ireland in the first of the Grand Slam tests. And a very special guest who's been a great friend of the show joins us again, Alan Quinlan. Alan played 27 games between 99 and 08 for Ireland. He's involved in a couple of World Cups as well and played the All Blacks on the 2008 Grand Slam winning tour. And we conceded 24 points across 4 games. 6 points a game in that. We're a pretty dominant side. It is always a pleasure to have you back here. We've got lots to talk about. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Martin. My pleasure. Very fond memories of playing against the All Blacks a few times and also touring there and then working most recently, probably in 22, which was a very pleasing tour for Ireland, winning the series, first time ever. It's been... It's my pleasure to be back on. I've always been a fan of the All Blacks, and they've been the team that I've always looked at and watched very closely. And I know rugby is like a religion in New Zealand. I've many great friends there, and very fond memories of not so much on the field, but certainly fun making friends, and obviously some great Kiwis who've played with me in Munster as well.
Look, and there's so much to unpack already there, and, we're going to be concentrating on this Chicago test, but just, the fact that you say that you hold the All Blacks in such respect, there was a seismic change, wasn't there, after Chicago in 2016, and we've been talking about this already this week, that prior to that, we've always loved playing Ireland. We as far as the people go, I mean, there's a huge Irish contingent. You can't be a Patrick Devlin and not have some Irish in you, on this side of the microphone. But after 2016, the rivalry changed into a rivalry where all of a sudden your guys knew that they could win, and that has really altered everything about it. And we go into these contests now, it's not just, hey, we're going to have a great game and we're going to have a great aftermatch and everything. This is a real rugby test against a real rugby rival.
Yeah, it is. And I think from my own experience of touring in New Zealand, I think 2002, 2006, 2008, a couple of those test matches were close. I think one in 2006 in Hamilton. I think Ireland were leading for probably 70 minutes of that game. I know Dougie Howlett scored early in the game, but Ireland had a lead on the 72nd minute, and I think Anu bust through the middle and ran over Peter Stringer and put the All Blacks in front. There was a very close one in Wellington in 08 in horrendous weather conditions. So there was a couple of close ones, and being part of those groups, and Brian O'Driscoll was our captain in 06 and 08, Keith Wood in 02. We always spoke about that aura, and maybe that aura kind of affected us in a way that, belief and confidence and all that kind of stuff. I think that started to change a little bit. 2013 in Dublin, again, Ireland put in a superb performance for probably 77 minutes of the game. And then, they couldn't shake the All Blacks off, which is testament to the quality and the belief that's in an All Black player, probably particularly back around then, and also the quality of player. But 16, what happened in Chicago in 16, it was, I actually thought about Paul O'Connell, Brian O'Driscoll, Ronan O'Gara, these guys who had Keith Wood, who played against New Zealand so many times and went close a couple of times, got some massive hidings other times. They didn't experience that in their career. The 2016 team in Chicago, I think, produced a fantastic performance, scoring 40 points against New Zealand, and just finally getting that result, I think. And I think there's been throughout the professional era. I think when I started again, I don't want to go back too much, but I think just belief, confidence, and bringing through the quality. And when you get good players and you assemble a decent side who that bit of belief and confidence can help, and you've got to execute then. So Ireland went close a number of times, and 2016 is a big shift mentally. And I remember talking to a couple of players in 2018, I think. Not, yeah, 2018, Ireland won 16-9 against New Zealand in Dublin, November 2018. And I'm obviously working at the game, and I'm doing some punditry stuff, but I'm also doing a couple of Q&As after the game. And I remember 3 or 4 players came up to do a sponsors event, and I remember asking the players in front of people, what was the feeling going into the game? You had a win in 2016, you lost then a couple of weeks later when they came back to November. And then in 2018, the All Blacks are back again. So 3 games later, essentially, from that game, 2 games later, sorry, from that game. And the answer from one of the players was, we expected to win.
Wow.
And I found that really intriguing. And it wasn't in a disrespectful way.
I understand.
It was just that the confidence had shifted, the belief. And obviously, when you're ticking boxes around your set piece and your attack and your structure, and you look around and you see that there's quality players there who can perform and are comfortable at international level, and you put all those pieces together, and then you have that belief and confidence, it does make a difference. It doesn't always get you the result, but I just thought that was really intriguing, and I was kind of envious of that player, thinking, God, I wish I'd experienced that, but I think it was definitely a shift. Look, since 2016, there's been 10 games. Ireland have won 5.
Yeah.
New Zealand have won 5. So that tells its own story. There's so many players gone previously who were in a couple of close battles, but as I said, were on the end of big losses as well. So it doesn't make any difference for the weekend going forward. Well, I think there's players there who've experienced that before, so they know that if you are to beat New Zealand, and it's probably similar for Ireland beating South Africa a couple of times in the last few years as well, and Australia, it's very small margins sometimes when you're playing against quality sides, and you have to stay in the fight. You have to execute your own structure and plan, and then you've got to hope that you get an opportunity or two and you take it. And they've done that particularly well. There's obviously a few question marks about this Irish side now. We're not a young side anymore. I think the World Cup in 2023 was the best Irish side, I think, respectfully, that I'd ever seen at a World Cup. The form on the back of the tour, winning New Zealand, some of the performances, the dominance, winning Grand Slams and World Championship. And obviously, New Zealand beat them in that quarter-final, but that was, created a bit of a shudder amongst that group. And, Johnny Sexton moves on. A couple of other players are gone since. So Mahoney, Murray, Cian Healy, a lot of test caps gone, but that comes to everyone in the end. And, but there's still a good few players who are not young. They're in their 30s. And the challenge for Andy Farrell is, do they stay there? Will they be there for the next cycle of the World Cup? And I think this November series is, I wouldn't say it's big pressure for the Ireland team. I think it's big pressure for some individuals, because they've got to perform and they've got to ignite their status quo, if you like, or their being as internationals. And obviously, time and age can come against people. I'm not suggesting it is, but I'm really intrigued to see how some of these players deliver. Can Ireland find that bit of spark again? Because, after that World Cup, they came back, they went to France, they won a first game in France. They've had some highs. They won a test match in South Africa, and you know how difficult that is. They lost the first test, won the second test. So they've had some very big highs. New Zealand came last November, beat them. It wasn't a good November series for Ireland last year. They struggled against Argentina. They won the game. They were jittery against Australia as well, won the game. And I think the last Six Nations, I think their best performance was away to Scotland. That was the dominance they had. They started well against England. They started well against England, then they had a really good performance in Scotland, but France kind of created some question marks again, and then they finished with a poor it was a win over in Italy, but not on a big high. So there is some question marks around the squad, and Andy Farrell was asked about the age and the profile, and the squad has a lot of familiar faces. So yeah, I think November is a big pressure point for some individuals. And they're big characters. They've delivered well for us. We don't have an incredible pool of players. Our pool is quite small. If you look at France, for example, this November, Fabien Galtier has brought in 10 uncapped players. He's a massive amount of players to choose from. And there is a few question marks with Andy Farrell. Why isn't there more players coming through? And, I've probably asked the question the last 2 weeks myself. Who are they? And so it's a really interesting and intriguing one. But there's so much history with Chicago, with what happened with Anthony Foley's passing and the figure of 8 and that first historic win, that this weekend should be fantastic as well.
Alan, I don't want to use the word underdone, but when you look at where the All Blacks are at and the fact that we've come off this rugby championship and we've come off 2 wins against Australia, and I know that we haven't played for a couple of weeks, but we had a period of 8 weeks there where we had some titanic test matches. You guys have just started your club rugby season, haven't played internationals because, those on the Lions tour did, of course, but since the Six Nations haven't been together. How much does that come into play, if at all? Is it an issue that we might be a better prepared side and much better prepared for this weekend's game?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that comes up a lot, and I've spoken a good bit about this over the years. Well, if Ireland play really well on Saturday and win the test match, it's not an issue.
There you go.
If New Zealand lose the match, then they're tired, they're fatigued, it's been a long season, people want to go on holidays. So it can work both ways, and I've seen that many times over the years for the November series, or even for us in the summer tours when we go to the Southern Hemisphere, when I experience it myself. There is a little bit of, God, I'm looking forward to 3 weeks' time when I can, go on holidays and stuff and take a break. But look, in my opinion, being battle-hardened is always an advantage. And New Zealand are in a better place physically, from a conditioning point of view. I know you have a couple of injuries that probably are not helpful, but there's been some young players come through this year, and the team is evolving, and they've had some very big highs, as you said. A couple of disappointing losses, most notably that second half against South Africa was an eye opener for everybody. And but for Ireland, I think, it's strange because most of the team that will line out on Saturday against the All Blacks will have played one game, and that was against Munster in the URC, and they lost that game. Munster won and were quite dominant. And I think that kind of added a little bit to the nervousness or the narrative around this could be challenging, this could be difficult. Maybe there's too many Leinster players in the team. Maybe the other players, Andy Farrell hasn't picked enough from the other provinces. So those stories have been kind of bubbling a little bit. So I think obviously with on the flip side of that, Andy Farrell has been fantastic for Ireland, and he's a very inspiring guy. And I think he finds an answer most of the time. And obviously with Ireland going out to Chicago, I think they went the start of last week. They had a couple of days last week, but they've a lot to get through, if you know what I mean, in a couple of days, Martin, and try and build up and get up to speed. And the players will certainly be undercooked from a match practice point of view. So, of course, that is a concern to me, and we'll know the answer to that after Saturday.
So much riding on this for the All Blacks as well, because when you tackle a Grand Slam and this is the first match up, part of that question is, and you can answer this, is it a Grand Slam? We're considering it a Grand Slam because we're playing all 4 of what we used to call the home nations. However, this match is in Chicago, and if it's a real Grand Slam, it's meant to be obviously played in Ireland. But if the All Blacks don't win this game, well, then it changes everything about what this tour is. All of a sudden, that isn't attainable. All of a sudden, what do? Do you start blooding new players? Do you actually look at it in a different way, in a different perspective? So I suppose the question is, we consider that we have more on the line here. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, obviously there's not a Grand Slam situation for Ireland here. It's never termed as a Grand Slam, but next year, you go to the Six Nations, you have a chance of winning a Grand Slam. Yeah, I think there's probably more on the line. this time next year we'll be in a Nations League. There'll be points on the line, won't there? And it, going into November next year, it'll be people will be vying for the top spots and trying to play in the semi-final or final and win the Nations League. So I think that'll be a great addition. Your traditional test matches now there'll be points available to play in them, which will be brilliant.
Yeah.
I will miss the summer tours, the 3-test scenario, the 2-test scenario. That's certainly something that's unique, and it's a shame that that's not happening. But obviously in Nations League and making these games, although we as players always felt, you play a test match, there mightn't be a trophy at the end of it. It's still a massive thing to play. The rugby haters kind of term them as friendly matches.
There's nothing friendly. No, that's football. I understand that in football. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have a small minority in Ireland who don't like rugby, and they'll always try and knock the rugby team. But a massive amount of popularity around rugby, and it's crazy because it's probably our 4th or 5th sport, most popular sport. But yeah, look, I think for Ireland, there's going to be so many Irish there as well, and there's obviously a big connection with the Irish Americans and all that kind of stuff. Memories of the last time. It's a carnival type scenario, and I think Ireland possibly cost the All Blacks a little bit the last time. I don't think, and I've heard Scott Robertson this week speak about, their learnings from that, some people who were involved around that time. So yeah, there's big motivation for both sides to win it, but probably a little bit more for New Zealand in a sense of, if you finish off your season by winning 4 games in a Northern Hemisphere team, it's a massive achievement, and it's something that I've no doubt that they're going for, and they're really determined to do this. And it's challenging. You get the first one up and running, and you bounce into the following week, and you find a way. It's not all about perfect performances either, because it's kind of like cup rugby when you have that mentality of winning a Grand Slam. So yeah, it should be an interesting one, but I possibly look. It's a massive one for Ireland. I think the problem and the issue here for Ireland is that those question marks will get louder, and more questions will be asked around the team, the age profile, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But there's some big characters in there, and as I said, Andy Farrell is someone I trust a lot, and I think he'll find a way to make it difficult anyway. There's no doubt about that. I expect Ireland will find a performance, whether it'll be good enough or not. But for Scott Robertson's side, yes, there's a massive opportunity here to go for a Grand Slam, and it starts on Saturday.
Alan, the Andy Farrell factor, so not coaching during the Six Nations and then coming back in, is that an easy transition to make? I mean, obviously he's been with Ireland, as you say, a number of years, and he knows most of these players, but taking off the Lions hat and putting back on the Ireland hat, is that an easy thing to do?
It's achievable and something that I would expect him to have thought about before he took the Lions job, and what that will look like, because he's contracted for another couple of years here, and when you're in the middle of a World Cup cycle, and it's a great honour for him. And I think he's been involved in a couple of Lions tours before that, but not as head coach. And I know he was dialed into Ireland and what was going on. They had a summer tour to Georgia and Portugal. Paul O'Connell was the head coach. I'm sure they were in conversations, and they were planning and putting a strategy together for some young players who played in those test matches, albeit Ireland won them comfortably. Yeah, I think, look, all the players know him inside out, and it's just draw a line in the sand after the lines and switch on. And look, since he's come back from Australia, I'm sure he had a couple of weeks off, but I'm sure he was dialed straight in of the plan, the structure, and the challenging part for not just for him, for the rest of the coaches, is getting this team up to speed. And there's no quick fix or easy way of doing that. I think you hope that, like, one thing that would give them that he could probably look at, but Ty Byrne, who I think he's been an outstanding player internationally for a number of years, and if you think back to his performances against the All Blacks in 22.
Oh yeah,
he was phenomenal in those test matches, particularly in the third test when you guys were fighting back and causing Ireland a lot of problems. He came up with incredible turnovers, and I think he's one of the best in the world at that. He was outstanding last week against Leinster, so that was his first game back. He put in an outstanding performance. There's probably 12 10 or 12 Leinster guys who will probably be starting for Ireland, who, the narrative was that they don't have that match practice. So he bucked the trend, if you like. So I think Andy Farrell will be hoping that he might even show him Ty Burns' performance and say, don't buy into this. We're not match fit, so he'll be very hopeful that he can get up to speed. His coaches can and his team, but it's a challenge one. It's very simple. If Ireland win this game, or look, there's every chance you can get a good performance and still not win a test match, particularly against a side as good as New Zealand. So even if Ireland play brilliantly, that doesn't guarantee him anything. But I think he'll be really hopeful, and the rugby public here will be hopeful that Ireland can be in this contest and cause problems and get up to speed. It's a big challenge. It's a task ahead. But as I said, I think of all those things, Martin, and I go, yeah, here are all the challenges. You can buy into these excuses and you can kind of go, well, here are all the excuses ready for us. I just know from his mentality, and I'll give you an example. Sorry, I'm probably going on too long about this, but I sat at a press conference in Dunedin in 2022 for the second test on a Thursday, and the All Blacks had beaten Ireland pretty convincingly in that first test.
Score-wise, I'd agree with you. Score-wise, I think we had quite a few kind of what?
Yeah, score-wise,
breakaway tries. Yeah,
and I did go away from that game thinking, Jesus, small margins here, and if this happened and Ireland had, taken the opportunity here or defended a little bit better there, that game could have been a lot closer. But I listened to him in that press conference in Dunedin, and I was out there with Sky Sports doing the commentary, and honestly, I wanted to go out and play the second test myself.
Wow.
I just thought he loves a challenge, and it probably comes from his rugby league background and playing rugby league internationally at 17, 18, mixing it with the big boys when he was a kid. He was just, look, maybe it might be relevant to what's going on, but I just think his mentality, and we spoke about that at the start, it does make a difference. He's a winner.
Yeah.
So I think he has an ability to inspire people, and I was really intrigued by that press conference, and I wanted to go out and hence Ireland went on and turned things around. And, so this is another challenge for him. It's a big challenge because, as I said, there is a bit of pressure coming on this team and some question marks and a lot of familiar faces. So the pressure is on players and coaches here to perform against a team who, in simple terms, are battle-hardened and coming towards the end of their season. So he also said, Jordy Barrett, Scott Robertson says, his experience in Ireland, he'll know a lot about these players. So, it's a tough one and it's a big challenge for Ireland.
Final question for you, and we thank you so much for your time, and we could talk for hours about this, and we will afterwards as well. Does it mean anything? I know that, we always have to look back at history and the last results because we haven't played this game as we build up 2023 and the All Blacks in that quarterfinal win. And, you were there, I was there in Paris. It was just, that was the best All Black performance in a couple of years. Then last year was the best All Black performance of the year was in Dublin. And especially that second half where Damien McKenzie really controlled it. That was a massive test match for us and a big proving ground for Scott Robertson. We went on to lose narrowly to France, but we'd kind of scuffed it against England. But that Ireland was the real yardstick game. Can we read anything into those recent results, or can we read nothing into those?
Yeah, you can read something into them for sure. I think it probably makes Ireland a bit more nervous about it because that was a big performance, and it was you just sense it was a really collective anger, aggression, never say die attitude, not this flamboyant, all bells and whistles
100%.
skill set performance.
100%.
It was a dogged kind of a performance. Take your penalties, get the scoreboard ticking, and manage the game really well then to the point that just defend well against Ireland, keep them pinned back. And I mean that respectfully. It wasn't
totally
all-out attack and stuff like that.
Oh, we loved it.
And every team needs that little bit of doggedness and that simplicity in their performance. So, look, it's a new team. It's a new year. A lot of familiar faces who will experience each other going right back to 2016. So, we can read a little bit into it. But look, I think it's for me, New Zealand have to be favourites here, and they have that momentum going into the game. And I'm not underplaying Ireland. There is some concerns there, as I've highlighted in what I've said. But there's some big characters in this group who have maybe it wasn't the worst thing in the world that happened to them that Munster beat them last week, and there's a bit of pressure heaped on them. So they've got to find a performance here on Saturday against a really, really good side, and it should be an incredible occasion again. I think, my good friend and a lot of good friends of people in Irish rugby. I grew up with the Anthony Foley Pass, about a month before that, and it was just incredible to see that figure of 8. And maybe it was just one of those days that the stars aligned for Ireland. They're going to have to find something special to win next Saturday in Chicago, and it should be a fascinating game.
DSPN.